Things have happened in.
Yes. I wish. Yes, 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 yes.
Some parts.
And when did that,
We came in 71.
71, and then what is the role in 18?
How you doing? Sorry to see you going. Well, you deserve a good retirement. That's for sure. How many years with DeCiro?
Well, 37 years.
And
Yeah, and so,
as assistant and
yeah,
city
and then
manager?
city manager since 2011, so.
Well deserved.
Well, good afternoon. In case you don't know me, I'm Charles Ozaki. I'm the city and county manager. And I want to welcome you all to this session of the department overviews that we've been giving interested people and candidates. And as I just heard, you haven't received a briefing on what the city and county manager's office does. And so I'll be sure to cover that before I'm done here. But you've had one session, and if you've had any questions come to mind, let's be sure to give us those questions, and we'll get back with you on that. We also recorded the last session, and so it's online. And other candidates I think some candidates might be counting on that they'll be looking at this session online. And we have one more session on July 23rd, which we'll also record and put it online as well. The city and county manager's office, I think it was created right when Broomfield was incorporated. They decided to adopt the council manager form of government, and I think that was in 1961. And what's kind of interesting in Broomfield is the first city manager was only 2 managers ahead of me. And so George DeCiro was the second city manager, and he served in Broomfield for 43 years before he retired in 2011. And then that was the year that I was hired by the city council to become the city and county manager. And so I've been in Broomfield since 1982, so that's 37 years in July, and I served as the manager, city and county manager, for 8 years so far. And so the city and county of Broomfield was, and if you weren't in Broomfield when this occurred, when we transitioned from becoming, from being a city to a city that became a county, that occurred in 1998 due to a constitutional amendment. And so the idea of becoming a city and county was not a politician's idea. It was a grassroots idea. It came from the people. And the people, for many years ahead of 1998, which was the year of the Constitutional Amendment, that year the Constitutional Amendment was put on the ballot, for many years prior to that, the people felt a need to improve services in Broomfield. We happened to be at the corner of 4 counties, Boulder, Adams, Jefferson, and Weld. And so Sheridan and 120th is where Boulder meets Adams and Jefferson County. And so Jefferson County is at the south, or was at the south, I believe the south west corner. Boulder was at the northwest corner, and Adams was east of Sheridan. And so that was the 3 counties, and then Weld is up above State Highway 7. At least that's the way it was. And so there was a grassroots idea that started with the residents in Broomfield who felt like they were underserved because they were at the far corner of 4 different counties. A lot of it had to do with human services not being available to our residents. And when the city council initiated some community meetings throughout Broomfield to come up with a strategic plan for the city and county of Broomfield, one of the sentiments that came from the public was one city, one county. And if there was some sentiment about one city, one school district, but it was a little more complicated since we were in 6 school districts, and the pathway was a little more difficult. And so, acting on that sentiment that came through the adoption of the strategic plan for Broomfield, the city council then initiated a number of studies to see if it was feasible to become one city and one county. And in council's determination, they did agree with that idea and pursued one city and one county at the state legislature. So in the year before the constitutional amendment was presented, they lobbied the state legislature to pass putting the ballot, the constitutional ballot, on the 1998 election, and it had to pass the legislature by a 2/3 vote, which was a pretty substantial accomplishment. And we did get that. It was interesting because we had many issues to address with 4 counties. And there was that idea. The initial constitutional amendment said one city, one county, one school district. But it turned out that that wasn't quite legal, that you can only have one subject on a constitutional amendment. So Broomfield has this distinction of having its own amendment to the Colorado State Constitution, and which prescribes many things related to the continuing existence of Broomfield. But one thing that it did do was it it provided for Broomfield's charter to govern the form of government and its finances. And so it's kind of a unique situation that Broomfield has in the state of Colorado. It's the only other city and county in Colorado. The city and county of Denver was created over 100 years ago. So we followed a 100-year-old roadmap to create the city and county of Broomfield. Just a few other comments about the city and county of Broomfield. The government structure of Broomfield follows probably more closely a corporate structure where the mayor is the chairman of the board and the council members are the directors on the board. And so from an organizational standpoint, that's where the governance comes from. But they also uniquely different from a corporation. They can pass laws that affect the entire community. The charter prescribes that the mayor and council will hire a CEO, which would be the city and county manager. And so in the organization, the CEO reports directly to the mayor and city council, and all employees in Broomfield work for the CEO. And so that's the reporting structure, except for the municipal judge and the city and county attorney, who both are accountable directly to the mayor and city council. The attorneys in the city and county attorney's office would also fall in that category. And so that's how the organization in Broomfield is structured. We have, trying to think, I think we have like 16 different departments in Broomfield. Some of them are very small. We have a one-person department, which is our performance and internal audit department. But then we have very large departments, and you have heard from some of them already, the police department being one of the larger ones. And so that's how the city and county of Broomfield government structure is managed. In the city and county manager's office, we have the deputy city and county manager who has specific departments assigned to him, as well as the assistant city and county manager who also has a number of departments assigned to her. And we manage the organizations through the three people, city and county manager and the deputy and the assistant. And the accountability comes back to the city and county manager, and then the city and county manager is directly accountable to the mayor and city council. And so that accountability runs pretty deep. Broomfield's kind of interesting since for many years we've had 5 wards with 2 council members in each ward. That's 10 council members, and we've had that probably since Westlake was annexed to Broomfield, and they created the 5th ward. And some of this is like, the story I heard, so I don't know the exact facts. But, that has always meant that you have, regardless of the population, you've had a lot of people representing the people in Broomfield. And many cities either have 5 council members, 7, but very few have 10. And so there's always been a very close connection in my mind between the people and their elected representatives. And it's always felt like a very short, direct line between residents and the elected officials and the management within the city and county of Broomfield. The other thing that I want to emphasize is this idea of how Broomfield works as a community. There's been a long history and tradition, I think, in Broomfield, where community members have always gathered together to support one another. I would say that Broomfield is unique in the number and the effectiveness of the nonprofit organizations that exist within the community that have been willing to come together and to address very difficult problems over the passage of time. And so if you think about our nonprofits and what they do, I think that we're very fortunate to have that be a reality here in Broomfield. And the spectrum of the issues that they are willing to address, I think, is very, very unique. And I think that tradition of mutual support really provides the model for the Broomfield organization, the staff of Broomfield, on how our staff works with the public, looking to be mutually supportive of the public and wanting to address the issues that come about from day to day. And so I think hopefully you've gotten that message and that thought from other departments that you've heard from. But I believe that that is a great tradition that's within our organization, has been that way for a long time, and hopefully it'll continue to be that way going into the future. And so with that introduction, which was very long, and hopefully I don't put you back too far, I'm happy to answer any questions you might have at this time. But if not, I'll now go ahead and introduce the first presenter. So if you have any questions, please.
Okay. Thank you very much. Hello, there we go. Okay, so if Broomfield is designed basically as a corporate structure and you're the CEO, do you act autonomously, or do you carry out decisions or guidance from the city council and the mayor? Like, how is that? Because very often the city manager will act on behalf of the guidance of that, or are you in a position where you end up making decisions and sometimes those decisions are just autonomous regardless of city council input?
Here's a one reality. As in the corporate, kind of in the corporate structure, and maybe unique, the Broomfield City Council can fire me at any meeting that they might have. Okay, so all they have to do is raise their hand. I have a motion, let's fire a city manager. And so that's the accountability that the city and county manager faces on a daily basis, okay? And so in order to work with that direct accountability, the city and county manager needs to be in alignment with the city council and the mayor to the greatest extent possible. The mayor and city council adopt ordinances that provide for responsibilities of the manager and staff as well. And there are many ordinances in place that do that. They also adopt policies on a regular basis annually in terms of adopting the city budget. It's a policy document that provides guidance to the staff, to the manager and the staff. And the manager and the staff is expected to conduct their business in executing that policy document, spending the money in a manner that has been prescribed by the mayor and city council. There are a lot of programs that city council has created and authorized, and staff and the manager is expected to implement those programs. And so we get a lot of guidance, and the manager, and the corporate model is, it's interesting because there are a lot of different corporate entities that operate differently because of the CEO, maybe. But the corporate model in the government setting, I think, is very different from maybe the private corporate model, where the adoption of laws really brings into effect a more formal accountability for many things. And so enforcement of laws being one, where you enforce laws and residents, and businesses are held accountable as well in that particular situation. So does that answer your question?
So would you be able to act autonomously, but the only accountability then would be the council can fire, but you do have that ability to be able to act on your own?
Well, and meet the council's and the mayor's expectations, okay? Nobody is in my office on a daily basis watching what I do, okay? And so when you say autonomous, that's the scope that I'm thinking, that I have to perform acceptably for the mayor and city council on a daily basis, but they're not supervising me on a daily basis, okay? I have to perform and meet their expectations, but they're not providing daily supervision. They're providing general supervision.
And requests.
Pardon me?
And requests. So basically, they will have, upon their guidance, you'll figure out how to make that happen.
Yes, and
but you'll take it in as guidance, not necessarily.
That's right, because what's interesting is you have 10 council members plus the mayor, and you can't take orders from one if you don't believe the other 10 in general are in concurrence. Okay, so it's sometimes gets kind of complicated to do that, and so I think it comes down to that one council member can't tell the manager can't direct a manager if it doesn't meet the I guess the concurrent thinking of the at least the majority of the other council members.
Okay, thank you. And the second question I had was, you were talking about a majority of the nonprofits sort of filling in services that the county had not been providing, and it seems like there is more and more partnerships that have been developed since the formation of the county. Are there any long-term plans for the county to eventually fill those positions or increase the partnerships, or is it reliant on those partnerships to maintain, I guess, best practices for a county?
Yeah, so I didn't mean to say that the example I brought up was that the community feeling in Broomfield, in my opinion, has come about by residents who have, identified problems and have worked together mutually in a supportive way to solve problems. And so one good example is Bell Swan. A lot of government programs address what the needs of children that when they're in school through K through 12, and especially the developmentally disabled kids. But there was no program prior to K through 12. And so Bal Swan was created by parents who had children or who were connected with children who had those special needs. And they created the organization to address those needs. And what was great about Bal Swan, and what is still great about Bal Swan, is they created a preschool that wasn't just for developmentally disabled kids, but was created in a model that had typical children integrated into that preschool program. And so they actually have created a wonderful model for others to address that situation. But and so that way they have not only parents who had the special needs children, but also other parents who could benefit from that preschool program as well. And it's a great example of how Broomfield community comes together to address problems. And we've had a lot of those groups come about. And, there are niches that have been filled by many different groups over time. But when Broomfield became a county and also created a Health and Human Services department, then that helped to provide and fill in a lot of niches that other folks were trying to do as best they could. But now you had a government-supported entity that is also coming in and being a base to provide services. But, it's with this idea that we had a great community that was mutually supportive of one another, and we were then becoming an authorized government to also provide services. It's made for a very good situation for maximizing the capabilities of the community with the government, and that's still our view of how we address problems.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Yes.
Thank you. Actually, I just had one question, and it wasn't specific to the city manager's office. I was just wondering if you could give me, or maybe I'm sure you guys have this on a fact sheet or something about the challenges of creating a school district for Broomfield. I know there's a lot of political questions with ballot questions in different school districts and financial reality of buying buildings, but if that's available somewhere, I would really appreciate it just to learn more about that problem.
I'll be happy to meet with you for a few hours to talk about that. And I'll only have peripheral knowledge of if this is what you wanted to do, what would need to be addressed.
Thank you. And thank you for your service to the city, and congratulations on your retirement.
Thank you. Yeah. Okay. And so this afternoon we have Library and Cultural Affairs, Finance, Assessor, Clerk and Recorder, and Public Works. I carved out a half hour out of that time, so I think each one will have to give up 5 minutes or something like that. And then on July 23rd, we're going to have Community Development, Economic Development, Open Space and Trails, IT, and Municipal Court. And so, and hopefully if people will be able to look back on the videos if you have any questions. But if the videos don't answer your questions, please submit them to the manager's office or to the departments, to the department heads directly, and we'll be happy to respond to anybody's questions. So, hey, thank you all for coming to this session. It's appreciated. Your interest is appreciated, and hopefully the shared knowledge provides an opportunity for you all to know more before you come into the system, right? And it's appreciated, as well as to be more engaged in this community going forward. So thank you all for coming. Our first presenter is Abby Ellman, our Director of Library and Cultural Affairs.
All right. Thank you, sir. Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for coming. As Charles mentioned, I'm Abby Yellman. I'm the Director of Library Services and Cultural Affairs here in Broomfield. With me today, sitting back there very quietly, is also my Deputy Director, Catherine Lineup. Love to put a face to her name for folks because she serves as a very critical partner for me in everything we do in our department. So if you ever have questions for me or Catherine, please let us know. I'm going to do a brief overview, and I have the clicker. I'll make sure it works. And I look forward to any questions you guys might have. I will try to be brief because that's just fair to David and the rest that are waiting to go. So I'll start with a bit about, I'll stay on that slide. I'll start with a bit about who we are. So the Library and Cultural Affairs, our mission is to cultivate innovation and community engagement by actively creating opportunities to discover, explore, share knowledge and culture. We strive every day to inspire, empower, and connect all in our community by providing quality services and programs in a welcoming, safe, and inclusive environment. Along with who we strive to be within our community, we also strive to nurture and develop our staff. We are a curious, collaborative, solution-focused team driven by passion and aligned to a common purpose. We have amazing people who make possible everything we're about to talk about today. And it's always the wish of a director that you can bring your people with you because they truly are the bread and butter of what we do every day. So I have to give a shout out to them. They're some amazing folks. The Library and Cultural Affairs. So this is just an overview of the 2019 department budget. The budget is just over $3.6 million for the entire department, and the department consists of 4 divisions: Library Services, Cultural Affairs, or the Arts if you'd prefer, Museum, and CSU Extension. We operate with 36.65 FTE, which is made up of both full and part-time staff, and I had to giggle when I watched Clay's presentation. It is weird when it says 0.65 people, but that's our part-time folks that are 20 hours or 12 hours or 18 hours, so that's where we get the 0.65. On the top right, you'll see a pie chart, and it's hard to see on this, but on the online presentation you can see it as well. It kind of gives you a snapshot of how the expenditures are broken out by division based on how dollars are allocated to each of those divisions. If you're curious for a bit more information or a full kind of look at the department's budget, on the bottom of this page, you can see it just really tiny there. There's a click here. And if you click to that, that will take you to the full 2019 budget presentation. And we all do those in the fall every year. So you can take a look at that if you want a deeper breakdown or have questions. So the best part of my job is getting the opportunity to represent my staff and talk about all the things we do and we love to do every day. The biggest key to our success in the past few years has rested in a concentrated effort to increase collaboration internally within and with our fellow and city county departments and community organizations. We do not believe in working in isolation. Our goal is to increase visibility for our programs and services, but also for those offered by others. Collaboration is hard work, but it has a powerful return, as it creates an environment where the community has a wealth of options and opportunities available to them. That's truly what we've found to be the power of partnership, is by bridging some of those relationships, we've created a menu, for lack of a better word, for folks to engage with whatever service or program they might need currently to fit whatever their personal or professional needs might be. So this slide right here is kind of a snapshot of the core services. I hate breaking out our services and our programs because we really do operate very collaboratively. But blending it, I tried. It didn't look very good. So I went ahead and broke it out and thought I'd talk about it a little bit. And then in the next few slides, I have some photos that, frankly, photos speak more than words, right? We can show you some examples of what we're talking about. So I'll go through these real quick. So Broomfield Library, obviously, is library services is the biggest division within our department. We are fine-free. And I mention that every time because that was a huge amount of support that we got from the community and from council to move in that direction. And I put up there, it removes barriers. That's huge for every person in Broomfield, and our visitors can come in and use our services with limited amount of barriers. We really try to make sure that everything we have is accessible to everyone. We obviously focus on education, access to technology and information. We have print and online resources. We're trying to boost up our digital resources a little bit. That's part of our budget ask for next year. Part of the Broomfield Library is also InventHQ. So if you've heard of InventHQ in our makerspace, it has been a tremendous addition over the last year. We opened April of 2018. It resides in Six Garden Center. STEAM education has become a big part of what we do. So not only are we offering this opportunity to kids who want to learn more about, science, technology, and the arts, because arts was a big part of that. We did not want to call it STEM. It is STEAM. But it's also a kind of a nurturing environment for aspiring entrepreneurs of all ages, which is really exciting because if you go in there and watch people during open hours, what they're prototyping, in the workshops, what they're learning, and how they can develop that entrepreneurial spirit, it's really exciting. So we're really proud of InventHQ. Family Place Library, so this is just a mention. Our bread and butter has always been children and families. We love that part of what we do. It's shifting a little bit, and we can talk about that in a little while, but we really do try to focus on how we empower children of all backgrounds, ages, everything, and their families. And then I put a shout out at the bottom to our library board and the Broomfield Library Friends Foundations. Our department has a lot of boards, a lot of boards. Between the arts, the museum, and the library, we have quite a few. We can't do what we do without them. They're huge advocates for us. They support us. They challenge us. That's how we prefer it. So got to give a shout out to all those boards. Cultural Affairs Division, Broomfield Auditorium is a huge part of that, along with public art. Art really resides in cultural affairs as far as the structure goes, but again, we try to blend that throughout our department. We have gallery, we have exhibits, we have programs, we have workshops. We do try to use the arts because it's the best, frankly, at creating placemaking. Arts brings people together, which is why we wanted arts to be part of STEAM education and not just STEM. It's open door. People tend to engage with the arts pretty freely and feel welcome. So the arts is a big part of what we do. As I mentioned, we also have two boards on that side, the Cultural Council and Public Art. Cultural Council plays a huge role for Broomfield. The Scientific and Cultural Facilities District, SCFD, They allot us so much grant money every year that we then disperse, we meaning the Cultural Council, they review applications and go through a really pretty tedious process to really see who has applied, what they're asking for, and where that money would be best used for Broomfield residents. Most of the time, it is local organizations within Broomfield. Sometimes it's organizations outside that provide programs to Broomfield residents. So that's kind of the criteria we work within. The Cultural Affairs Division also receives funding from SCFD that helps run our auditorium. So they play a critical role. So if you don't know a lot about SCFD, I would encourage that. They're a pretty critical partner all over the metropolitan area, but especially for Broomfield. Public art, they focus more on initiatives, like Art for a While is a great program. You'll see the sculpture walk at the Broomfield Commons. We have public art in a lot of places around Broomfield. But they also do a lot of community projects. So the new Broomfield Community Center, public art will be part of that to try to incorporate art into that building in some way. And that's something the Public Art Committee will work with the Parks and Recreation Advisory Committee and the Director of Recreation, Clay Shuck, to determine what that looks like for that building. We did that also in McKay Park and Open Lands, and I always say that wrong, so if I did, I apologize. But McKay is a really amazing place. If you haven't visited that park, it's amazing. We also were able to incorporate public art into that project. So we look for those opportunities to make art really visible to the community. Museum's pretty awesome. So museum is kind of one of my favorite divisions. I love them all, but the museum's cool, and mainly because it helped me as a new resident to really learn about Broomfield. I wasn't from here, I'm not from Colorado. So getting that connection through our museum supervisor, who's amazing, and all the other staff, they really have brought Broomfield history alive in that museum. So it includes the Depot Museum as well as Six Garden Center, and I didn't put that up here and I should have. We have history, our archives and our collections are now in Six Garden Center, and much better organized than it was before. Used to be in 5 different locations, which makes it hard for our residents to come and engage with those artifacts. We also serve as a liaison to the Broomfield Veterans Memorial Museum, and usually when I say that, I could just mic drop, because that's it. I mean, the Broomfield Veterans Memorial Museum is amazing. They're an amazing group of volunteers. They serve a critical role within Broomfield, and we're very fortunate to have them as a partner. Again, we talked about the history programs. We do a lot of tours at the Depot. The Depot is open on Saturday. We're looking at potentially other ways to engage throughout the week as well, with maybe a few open hours during the week. But again, our museum supervisor, along with staff from other divisions, have really elevated the level of programming they're doing. The programming is off the charts this year, and the engagement, so through escape rooms and all kinds of programs, the speaker series, which is going on right now. They've just done a lot over there. We're really proud of them. So our newest addition is CSU Extension. It used to reside in Health and Human Services. It's been part of Broomfield for a while. This is with Colorado State University. We kind of lobbied for it, for lack of a better word. We wanted CSU to be part of our department because we align well with them. They do a lot of programmatic things, provide a lot of service. Their main focus for Broomfield right now, and Catherine's the expert really here, and Sarah Schweig. Dang, I didn't say it right still. Sarah's amazing, but I never say her last name right. Both of them really kind of lead that initiative in that division. Master gardening is huge. It's a robust program, but horticulture is really important to Broomfield. That was identified as a big thing. They want experts and guidance and research-based instruction around community gardens and what should I be planting at my home. And CSU offers on-site. They will come talk to you. They talk to you on the phone. So our goal with that, and you can kind of see it's not just horticulture. They do a lot of things. They've given us our STEAM trailer as well to use for events. So there's a lot of value they add for Broomfield. What we're working on doing now is trying to get them more visible. So we're hoping we can move them into our current Broomfield Library facility at some point this year, maybe the first part of next year. But we're working towards that because we really think it'll benefit the community to be able to access them a little bit more. All right, so I'm totally going off script, which is what I do every time. So I'm just going to go through this a little bit quickly. I always think it's powerful to see images of what we're doing. Like, I can talk about it, right? But actually seeing the engagement and how we're reaching out to our public is really important to me. So again, a shout out for the museum on the top left up there. This is a good example of how we're merging what each division's kind of mission is and how we merge that as a department. So at the Broomfield Depot Museum, we had an art IFACS program that was amazing where it incorporated arts and history. So people came, they learned about Broomfield history, and then they were painting artifacts, which was really exciting. It was a range of ages in that program and really popular. We also try to inspire people through the Broomfield Auditorium. Broomfield Auditorium serves a big purpose, not just for the arts and for our community organizations that are involved with the arts. They also serve a big purpose for the library. We have a lot of programs in there as a library, One Book, One Broomfield for children. We have One Book, One Broomfield for adults. In the middle, you'll see the Barefoot movement and music. So this is a good example of how we're inspiring folks to be creative, to engage and figure out what their niche is and what they love to do. Invent HQ is represented up there as well. And then in the bottom right corner, I love that picture because it's an example, I think, of one of our international nights. I'm not sure if it was Colombia. We just did Scandinavia, but this was Colombia. And I love that the pictures showed everybody getting up, dancing, trying it, diverse audience. It was really cool. And I think it helped remind us that we're a little bit more connected than we realize. And when you learn about other cultures and their music and their food, and if there's food, everybody wants to go. So we do a lot trying to inspire everybody, and of course through public art as well. Empowerment. So this one I get a little excited about, and Catherine's gonna have to go, okay, that's enough. Empowerment's a big one. We're big believers and we wanna make sure that everybody has access. And so I look at the library, especially as a public education institution that's free to everyone. That you can come regardless of your means, regardless of your background and skill level, age, whatever you might have as a challenge, you can come and engage and learn. And so what's cool about everything we do, from the arts and the museum and everything, you can do self-directed learning, or you can come in and do workshops, or come to a tech class and have some instruction. So a couple of really powerful examples for me on this screen is, I gotta start with Career Online High School. So on the right, you see our graduate right there. We implemented this program about 1.5 years ago. It was through a grant. We have committed to keep that going. It was a grant through the state library. Basically, this is allowing adults who didn't have the opportunity to complete an accredited high school diploma program, they can achieve their high school diploma now for free in an online program offered through Gale. And so this is Catherine's baby, and I'm looking at Catherine because this is a heartstring puller. When you go to these graduations and hear their testimonials, it is powerful. I tell Catherine all the time, the one thing that's always bonded us is we want to change lives, us and our staff. And this is a great example of you are changing lives with that program. The Broomfield Detention Center, we're really proud of that collaboration as well, because that not only incorporates our PD and our detention center, but Broomfield Workforce, Broomfield Early Childhood Council, where we're going into the detention center as staff and... Okay, that's new. That was exciting though. Maybe that's my signal. Were you giving me a signal? Okay. So we go into the Broomfield Detention Center and offer programs related to job skills, so resume building and interviewing, and how, in a specific situation, how do you promote yourself to get a job? We also do parenting classes. That actually, I think, is starting, it either started or is starting later this summerish, August, where we're actually going to get in there. If you're somebody that's incarcerated, you really want to make sure you're keeping that connection with your children. So building parenting skills is important. Other things, IDHQ, we've talked about Invent HQ for entrepreneurs is huge. We also have online resources. So lynda.com, if you want to get on there and learn how to do photography, or if you want to learn how to code, lynda.com is one of the best resources available to anyone, and it's free. And you can do it in the library, at home, wherever you would like to engage with that. So again, we're really proud of the empowerment part of what we're doing. And quickly, connection. This one is really important to us because the library, cultural affairs, our arts, museum, we are a connecting place for our community. We really work hard to make our environment safe, welcoming, stigma-free, which is not easy for some of our other departments that deal with different things. That stigma sometimes lingers over them. We really try to break that down so people can come and engage freely. They come and they want to meet, they come work, they come sit in our facilities, they use our facilities as renters to promote their programs and organizations. We get out into the community quite a bit, which is something I wanted to make sure I mentioned. We do a lot of outreach. We meet our community where they are as much as we can. It's hard sometimes because there's a lot of demand for that, but we've been to Centennial Elementary. We go up to neighborhoods that invite us in to come engage with their programs, obviously with Brouhaha and Broomfield Days. We really do try to be visible and out in our community. And the one other thing I want to mention in the bottom corner is we have an Experience Pass program that is really amazing. It offers anybody with a library card the opportunity to go and visit cultural institutions or recreational institutions like the Denver Zoo, Botanic Gardens, Clifford Still Museum for free. And so all you need is a library card. And again, that's our way of leveling the playing field. We want every kid or every adult or every senior to be able to engage with these different types of programs. And we've got great partners in that program that allow that to happen. All right, so if I didn't give you too much information, if you would like more information about anything we do within our department, these videos, and I got to give a shout out to Ann and her team, the communications department helps us develop these videos that promote some of the things we do. So if you want to learn more about our public art installation at McKay, or if you want to learn more just about what the library does, you can go to these and click them. They're in the online presentation. And then, as I said, talking about what we do takes very little effort. I'm extremely proud of what we do here in Broomfield, not just of my own staff, but of every staff within Broomfield. We couldn't do anything we do without everyone. It really takes the whole Broomfield organization to make a lot of this happen. I appreciate your time, and I can answer any questions you guys might have. Yes, ma'am.
I was glad to see your emphasis on empowerment. And I connected that with children's services. So I recently read a study that was on the front page of the Denver Post. It was featured where there's a great disadvantage to children who do not have internet access after their school hours. So do you regularly see a need for that within your areas? And if so, do you feel like you're adequately meeting that need?
So I'll answer the last part first. No, I don't think we're adequately meeting it because it's a challenge. You've got kids all over Broomfield, different. So again, one thing I've learned from Broomfield Fish is this is not a low-income problem only, right? Every household experiences issues. Broomfield Fish has served many of our neighborhoods throughout Broomfield. So I don't know that I have a good gauge of how many kids that is. Do we have access to them? Yes, which is part of the reason why we eliminated fines in the library specifically, because kids need to be able to use our facilities. I know the mayor was a big advocate for that, because for children especially, because we want to level that playing field as much as possible. I do know, though, in working with our IT director, there's conversation going on a bigger global scale about how we connect all residents and how we ensure that we have that for kids and adults, but kids after those after school hours when they don't have access to it. And that's hard when you get handed a laptop or a Chromebook or whatever they call them in the school and said, hey, here's your homework, go do it at home. I don't have internet. So I know, and I also know in talking with BVSD and Adams 12, they're very conscious of that. So they're also working on initiatives within the school districts to figure out how they meet that need of the kids that can't afford internet at home. We have talked to some companies too that have programs for folks that can't afford it, that they can engage with too. So if anybody ever wants more information about that, we can pass that along. So we do try to stay on top of it, but yeah, I don't think we have a good gauge of it yet, nor a good answer, but it's definitely a big conversation for us.
Okay, as far as part of the arts, is there any consideration for murals in the city?
Yeah, and ironically, our BLA project, or our BLA team, so we have Broomfield Leadership Academy internally. It helps develop our staff and leadership skills, all kinds of things. Well, they have to do a project every year. So there's one right now that I know has, and Anne can giggle too, I know it's even reached her, where they want to do more of that kind of thing. So they're actually coming up with a scope for a kind of a pilot project around murals. I know that we had communication with 7-Eleven, Catherine, wasn't it? That they're actually doing their own. So as far as a business and a developer, we're encouraging them as well to do some of that stuff. So theirs is a mural that's going to be on the side, I think, of their building. I'm looking at Jill and Catherine to keep me honest there. So yeah, definitely talk around murals. And with the Civic Center, I think that will come up a little bit more as well. Can't say that for sure yet, but I hope so.
And then also in regards to the Depot Museum, in the past couple of years, they renovated the whole exterior. Are they going to renovate the Bee House?
Yeah, so that actually I should have mentioned because that was on the first screen with the budget. We are working on that right now. So we're in the process. I think the design plans have been vetted through. And so the honey house, the outhouse, and the pump house, everybody needs a renovated outhouse. So those 3 buildings are going to get renovated to where then it'll match more of the exterior and kind of create a more, conducive environment where people are like, wait, why does that building look like it's getting ready to fall down? The pump house is in really rough shape. So we want to stabilize it, make sure it's safe, and then be able to utilize those buildings in some way, more so the honey house probably than the other 2. So our museum supervisor is actually working internally with our CIP team to get that rolling. And we have the funds set aside this year to do that. So we're hopeful this year it might, with construction, you know how that goes, it might trickle into next year. But that's definitely in the works right now. Yeah. All right. I'm not sure who's next, so I'm going to step aside. All right.
Good afternoon. I'm Pat Soderberg. I am the Finance Director for City and County of Broomfield, and I do have the next part of the presentation. I'm generally challenged by these things, so hopefully I can keep this moving forward. Okay. Okay, so the Finance Department has a comprehensive role with the City and County of Broomfield, and we support, as basically an internal service department, we support the goals and missions of the organization as a whole, City Council, the Manager's Office, and we do provide support for all of the operating departments to help them meet their needs and goals as well. So basically our mission is to safeguard the assets, assure legal and fiscal accountability, and to provide customer service for both our internal and our external customer base. As a department, we've had some discussions about what are our guiding values over and above the guiding values for the City and County of Broomfield. As you can see on the wall, we do have a mission statement and the guiding values for the City and County of Broomfield. So that is overarching in the department as well. But we identified specifically for our department the values of respect, teamwork, trust, integrity, and innovation. We strive to exemplify that in the way that we do perform our duties and help the organization achieve its goals. Competencies, while there are very many, what we focus on in order to provide the best service that we can are communication skills, responsibility, personal responsibility, and personal accountability is a key factor for me personally and for the department as it operates, critical thinking, and technical proficiency. So within the department, we do have 5 specific areas, divisions. We have the budget division, we have the fiscal services division, the purchasing division, the risk management division, and the revenue division. So just to give you a little bit more information about those in a couple of slides, but as an overview, that's the basic operations of the finance department. We do have an operating budget in 2019 of $5.6 million. The operating funds that we have come from a variety of funds within the organization. We do have city funds, county funds, water and sewer funds. We have within the department, there are 33 full-time positions and 3.51 FTEs for the part-time positions, which bring us to a total of 36.51 staff members. As far as the expense drivers for the finance department, the blue line, which you can see on this chart, and I know it's a little small, but just to focus on the colors, the blue line is the personnel costs. As an internal service department, the bulk of our expenses to run the department do revolve around personnel. We have the staff that do provide the functions that pay the bills, pay the employees, take in the revenues, things like that. So personnel, particularly in the fiscal services department, is the overarching main expense for the finance department. The red bar is the other one that seems to have prominence in a couple of areas in particular. One is the risk management department. So risk management oversees the property and casualty insurance for the city and county of Broomfield, and the contractual expenses that you see that are represented by that red bar are mainly the cost of premiums for our insurance to insure all of the assets and provide other types of insurance like fiduciary insurance and boiler and machinery insurance, things like that. Cyber insurance, we do have a policy that covers cyber insurance as well to a limited extent. So we've got the insurance premiums, and then on top of that, we do also have the deductible for our insurance. So whenever anybody makes a claim, of course, we would pay the deductible just like you would on your own personal insurance, and then the insurance contract would pay the remainder of that. The other division that does have a higher level of contractual services at this time is the utility billing. That is the division within the revenue division that operates the billing for our water and sewer systems. And the main drivers for the contractual services that you see in that that division are the actual processing of the bills that go out, postage associated with those bills, and then the online portal, because more and more these days people are seeking an online solution for making their bill payments. So we do offer an online portal, which does have additional costs, and credit card processing. So in general, when you use a credit card to pay your water and sewer bill, we are absorbing the costs that are resulting from the use of that credit card. So it's the discount fees through the credit card operators that is not borne by the customer when they pay their bill. They pay just the amount on the bill, and then we pay the contractual services associated with making that option available to them. Okay, so the Fiscal Services Division, as I said, that they have a large portion of the staff associated with the Finance Department. We do accounts payable, so that's the vendor payments. Every time that some goods or services are purchased for the city and county of Broomfield, somebody's looking to get a payment, and we facilitate that through our accounts payable. We have accounting and financial reporting for all of the governmental and the utility operating funds and the fiduciary funds associated with running the city and county as a business. And there are capital funds as well. We have a very robust capital program where we pay for infrastructure and other needs associated with making the goods and services available. This building, the new BCC that's across the way, the city vehicles that drive around and facilitate the other divisions doing their jobs. All of that capital program is administered or accounted for through the Fiscal Services Division. We do have cash management and investing, so there are funds associated with City and County of Broomfield. We have some in reserve accounts. We have general cash flows, and when those funds have an availability, we do have a program where we invest those funds so that we make use of them and they don't sit idle. We keep track of that, and again, as needed, we'll pull the funds out of the investment portfolio to make bill payments when necessary. But generally, our cash flow is set up to the extent where as the cash comes in, we use it to make the payments, and we aren't actually in the market actively buying and selling our investments. We have that managed so that we don't have to take advantage or be at the mercy of where the markets are. In that sense. We do have debt administration in the Fiscal Services Department. City and County of Broomfield does have outstanding debt associated with both the utility operations and the city and county itself. So there's the obvious payments that we make as far as principal and interest that's owed on that debt. And from time to time, we will take advantage of situations in 2012, we took advantage, and again in 2015, of a situation where the interest rates in the municipal markets had gotten to a point where refinancing our debt made a lot of sense. And so we keep an eye on that, and when it does make sense and we're able to, we, under the fiscal responsibility, we would bring for consideration for council an opportunity to perhaps refinance the debt. So debt administration plays a role there. We also do the payroll. So we not only pay the vendors, we also administrate the payroll for the employees. So yay, hope everybody got their check last week. The budget division is very similar to what you might see in any organization. The budget life cycle, it never ends, right? So we start at the beginning of every year. Council has their focus session. They establish priorities. We have the comprehensive plan. We have the strategic plan. There are a lot of guidance associated with how we manage the spending of the funds for the organization. So we get council priorities. We meet with departments. They have the responsibility in the first part of the year of preparing their budget requests related to both operating and capital. They'll turn that information in. We evaluate that. At the same time that they're preparing their request for spending, we're in the budget division, we are evaluating the revenue streams and the resources that might be available to meet those spending requests. Over the summer, all of that merges together. We say how much money we've got. We see how much money they want to spend. Everybody wants to spend. And we pull together the program that represents our best recommendation for how to utilize those financial resources as they come in. We go through a series of meetings with the manager's office. We make presentations to the city council. Every department also makes their own presentation to city council related to how they're addressing their budget needs and their challenges. And then every year, generally in October, we bring to council the budget to be adopted for the following fiscal year. Under Colorado state law, we are not allowed to spend any money unless we have a budget in place. So we try to do that every October so that by the time January gets here, everything's in place, everybody knows what they can spend, and they are legally authorized to do that at that point. By that time, okay, hey, it's January, let's start all over. So we take a look again at what's going on. I should say also throughout the year, even though the budget division is continually looking forward, what's coming next, we do have a 5-year forecast for our operating funds. We have a 5-year forecast for our CIP. We update on a periodic basis our long-range financial plan, which takes a look at what the projection might be for how we will be sustainable at build-out, which could be 20 years from now, could be 40 years from now, but basically we make some assumptions and come up with a plan to support the fact that the decisions that we make today won't have detrimental impacts to the build-out sustainability of the financial organization. And the budget staff also does work on a daily basis with all of the other departments as they're spending their current year budgets, monitoring that, making sure that they're staying within the line item budgets that they were approved for, answering questions they might have, helping them figure out how to best utilize the financial resources. So as I said, budget never ends. Risk management, again, as I said before, it's the property and casualty insurance for the city and county of Broomfield. All of the assets are covered. Our liability insurance is also covered within this area. It's not very exciting. It's insurance. So there you go. We have a purchasing division. The city and county of Broomfield actually operates with a decentralized procurement and contract administration in the sense that every department has their own experts and they know what they need to buy. What we provide through the purchasing division is oversight and guidance so that they can stay in compliance with the municipal code and the laws associated with procurement, in particular procurement at the federal level related to grant programming. So we do provide that assistance and often participate in some of those RFPs, requests for proposal and evaluation of bids as they come in. And then we do oversee the decentralized purchasing and procurement to ensure that the rules and regulations as outlined, as I said, in the municipal code and other guidance is adhered to. Revenue management, they actually, in the revenue division, we have three specific areas. The first one is property tax administration. So you're going to hear from Sandy, hopefully very soon, because she's next on the agenda. That means I'll be done. So the assessor goes out, and for all of the property within the city and county, they do the assessments. They make the estimation of the valuation of that property. It goes through the formulaic process at the state that determines, based on the actual values that the assessors determine, here are the assessed values, and Sandy can probably talk to you a little bit more about that. I won't get too much in the weeds and steal her thunder because it's real exciting, right, Sandy? But anyway, so there is an assessed valuation. Once that job is done by the assessor's office, she hands off all of the records to the Treasury Division and our revenue property tax administration, and we then are the ones that send out the bills and make the collections. The important thing about that is because as operating as a county, we collect all of the tax. And the bill that each individual property owner receives has the tax that's associated not only with the city and county of Broomfield, but for all of the other taxing entities. So school districts, fire district, special districts, city and county is also on there. But anyway, all of that information is included on one bill, and we do the collection. So we centralize collection for all of the taxing entities within our boundary. And then statutorily, by the 10th of the month following the collection of those revenues, the treasurer's office is, by law, responsible for transferring the revenues to the other entities who we collected on behalf of. So it's a continual process where we, on a monthly basis, will do the collections, and then by the 10th of the following month, we will distribute that monies to the taxing entities based on the mills that they have established and certified with the city and county. So just in general, the monies that we collect there, 47% of that goes for schools. And as Charles indicated, we have 6 school districts within the city and county of Broomfield. And depending on where your property is located, the mills that you pay for that school district varies. So, but we are responsible for tracking that by school district and sending the monies for each school district appropriately to whoever it is entitled to. So 47% overall goes to the schools. I'm going to skip the county for a second. The special districts get 14%. The fire district gets 13%. And then the city and county combined get 26%. 16% is identified as county revenues, and 10% is identified as city revenues. One of the things when we became the city and county that we were very cognizant of was that we wanted to be sure that by becoming a city and county, we would be efficient and effective in the way that we dealt with property tax revenues. And so we took a look at what all of the legacy counties were charging as far as their mill, and what we thought we could provide that same level of service, or actually, in our minds, an enhanced level of service for our citizens. And we set the mill purposely at a level where we knew we could be sustainable, but it was less than what the citizen might have paid if they had stayed as with the legacy county, and the Broomfield was not successful in combining as a city and county. At that time, we also took a look at what our city mill was, and we said, by combining with the county, we should also recognize some efficiencies as a result of becoming a combined entity, and we reduced our mills as well, so that the combined city and county mill at 26%, or it's 28.968 mills, is a lesser mill than you would have paid to the city and county combination before we became the city and county, and that has held the case ever since 2001. We have not raised that mill levy since that time. Other counties have had issues, not issues, but they have had a need to raise their mills, but we have not. It's 28.968 was in 2001 is today, and we don't anticipate that will need to go up in the near future unless there's some other kind of a directive that warrants a fresh new revenue stream, and that might be something like a program that we don't currently offer. If it was important enough to offer that service or that program, we could look to a property tax mill to support it. But at this time, that we're maintaining there. Also within the Revenue Management Division, we have Sales Tax Administration. So the City and County of Broomfield charges 4.15% sales tax on all retail sales. And the vendors report and remit that to our Sales Tax Division. So it is basically self-reporting. The vendor calculates what they had in sales for the month. They apply our sales tax rate to that. They file that either online or through a paper form, tell us what their sales were, and calculate the tax and remit that to us. So we do collect that internally here in our Sales Tax Administration Division. We also, that division is tasked with education of the vendors, because not all of the vendors for whatever reason, are following up and following the regulations related to sales tax. So they're available as a reference, but they also do reach out and try and ensure compliance through just, the friendly, hey, did you know you're supposed to do it this way, and can we help you with that? We do have collection for the Flatiron Improvement District through that as well, which is a special taxing district, and the Arista Local Improvement District. They're very small percentages of the taxes that we collect, but we do that as well. Utility billing, as I said, we do the billing and collection for the water and sewer utilities. So that's based on how much water you use, and of course the sewer services that are provided for as your water comes through. Department outlook, I won't spend a lot of time on this, and that's kind of small. You have the information, so you can certainly read it. I do want to say, just in general, that City and County of Broomfield Finance Department has received a clean audit opinion and the Certificate of Excellence for Financial Reporting from the Government Finance Officers Association for over 20 years running. We produce a CAFR document, which I can certainly go into much detail and bore you to death on if you're interested in, but we do produce that document on an annual basis, and it is it's a professional document, and it is at the level that is awarded the Certificate of Excellence. Our budget document, as Charles indicated, is also a policy document, but it too has received the Certificate of Excellence through the Government Finance Officers Association. So we are very cognizant of producing information, particularly financial information, in a way that's readable, understandable, of help in explaining where the money comes from, where it goes, and what our programs are. So I did want to mention that because that's something that we do strive for. The long-range financial plan, I did say that previously, we update that on a periodic basis. We're actually in the process of starting our most recent update on that, and so that's an exciting project that we're working on this year. The rest of this is just a bunch of charts about how the monies for the spending is allocated. And again, here you can see all of the different divisions that are represented and their relative share of our $5 million budget. The next slide shows about how that is broken out between spending categories. And as I said, personnel is by far the largest one in general for us as an internal service department, but our contractual services, which is that lighter blue big wedge, does have some component as well, as I explained before. And then the rest of these, I won't bore you with all of that, but it's just different ways to slice and dice where the money is spent in each section. So I think I tried to stay in my time. I'm not sure that I did, but I'd be happy to answer any questions. Oh, I do have Okay, I have handouts if you'd like them. This is basically our budget in brief, and this is our reference card related to the budgets. So it takes a lot to condense all of the information from this document into this one, but staff does a great job in hitting the highlights with this. And again, this is a really quick reference card that shows the magnitude of the total revenues and expenditures and kind of the broad categories of where those are at. So I will invite you to take a copy of each one of these as well. Actually, I'll pass them out as I'm walking out, but if you've got questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
Thank you, Mrs. Soderberg. I love your office.
So just real quick, you mentioned an acronym, CARF. I can't figure it out. I'm sitting back here trying to figure out that acronym. I see the document, but could you let us know what that acronym is?
Absolutely. It's the Comprehensive Annual Financial Report. And it looks like this. This is actually one I'm showing you in advance because it hasn't been actually published yet. We're getting ready to publish it at the end of this month. It's our annual financial report for the year ended 2018. But this is the CAFR document.
Hey, Pat, two questions. One is when was the last time you updated the long-range financial plan?
2013.
So my last year. So are there plans to update it now?
Yes, as a matter of fact, we have started working with the consultant, and we're just in the process of evaluating what our thought processes was and the methodologies that we used in the past updates, and figuring out, so what is it we want to focus on this year, or how can we make it better? So we are working again with Clifton Larson Allen, who was a consultant on the previous one, and just getting started on those meetings now.
And my second question is that while you haven't raised the mill levy, as citizens will point out, the valuation's gone up, and Sandy will talk about that. So
Absolutely.
Revenues from property taxes are going to go up quite a bit this year. What are the Tabor limitations on that? I mean, does that just become free money to the city, or are you limited on what you can spend?
Because Broomfield actually debruced, and then that means, as soon as the legislation for Tabor went into effect, Broomfield was one of the first communities who voted as a community to not impose those limitations on the city and county. At the time, it was the city. So no, we don't have any revenue limitations on that. We do comply with, under Tabor, we have an emergency reserve requirement, so we do comply with that. But no, we don't have any issue with returning those funds.
So do you have an estimate of how much property taxes will be greater, say, in 2021 compared to 2020?
Sandy can probably mention that, but I think what I heard from you was 12 or 13% overall. Yeah.
An increase. So yeah. Okay.
Okay. So the risk management division, so you handle the insurance for the city?
Yes, the property and casualty and liability insurance.
So would that also handle, say something's coming into the city, to be able to insure that, where you would have an actuary assess risk, possible damage, and how much money you would need to insure that particular project coming into the city?
No, not necessarily on a project basis. What we are insuring are the assets owned by the city.
Okay.
So it's like your homeowner's insurance or your vehicle insurance, that kind of thing.
Okay. So it doesn't consider, say a business comes in that the byproduct of that particular business could negatively impact. There's nothing to cover that. The onus is put on the business to insure itself.
That or code enforcement or any of the, they would have to comply with any regulations at the state, federal, or municipal level related to health and welfare of the citizenry, yeah.
Okay. Second question is, you handle management and investing.
Yes.
Is the city divested from fossil fuels in its investment package portfolio?
In our portfolio, we do have, and I haven't checked it recently, but I did check. We have like a $250 million investment portfolio, and at the time, last I checked, we did have two pieces of commercial paper for about $4 million that were with an oil-based, I think it was Chevron and Mobil maybe, were the investments there. So we don't specifically prohibit that, but it's not a significant portion of the portfolio.
Is there a way for us to get a list of what the city has invested in its portfolio?
Sure, I can make that available to you if I'll just get your information. And actually what I'll do is I'll post it on the portal where the candidate information is, and it would be as of the last end of month, so it would be the May listing of investments.
Thank you. And how much outstanding debt is owed by the city still?
Okay. So As of the end of 2018, the outstanding debt was $236,920,000. The bulk of that is associated with, we recently, in 2017, we issued $80 million worth of debt to finance two major projects. One is the Broomfield Community Center that's being built across the street, and the other is the completion of the 144th Dillon Road project. So each one of those projects at $40 million each was financed through that debt issuance. Associated with that, the rest of the debt, the utility funds do have, let's see if I can find that real quick. Okay, so the water fund has outstanding about $20 million worth of debt. The majority of that was used to acquire water rights and also to build facilities associated with treating the water. The sewer utility has $25 million worth of outstanding debt. That was associated with building the facilities to treat the wastewater as it comes in. When we became the city and county, we had some significant capital needs. One was the detention center, one was the police and court building, which is over here. The library and auditorium was actually built because the library functions used to be in this building, but we needed a space in this building for Sandy and some of the other county services. So we built the library and auditorium at that time. We also built, not because it was required by the city and county, but we also built the Paul Durder Rec Center about that time. So we currently have outstanding about, let's see if I can do this. There's about $60 million worth of debt remaining on those projects. And then the other piece that has outstanding debt is with the Flatiron Mall. When that mall was put in, we had a development agreement with a company called Westcor, and it's now Macerich, who built the mall. And in order to provide the public infrastructure surrounding that area to facilitate the actual construction of the mall, there was debt that was associated. The developer fronted the money for that, and then once they opened the doors and the mall was shown to be a proven quantity, we assumed the obligation associated with the debt that was associated with that public infrastructure, and there's about $50 million that was outstanding for that. So when you add it all up, it gets to, like I said, the $236 million that's outstanding.
Does all of that show up in the CAFR
It does.
report?
It does. There's a, I don't know how much in the weeds you want to go, but governmental accounting doesn't carry long-term obligations on its balance sheet. So there are statements in the CAFR for the governmental funds that don't show that on the face of those. But ever since 2004, when we implemented government standards, GASB 34, it required an oversight or an all-encompassing financial report called a basic statement in the front that does look more like a corporate balance sheet, and that debt is reported on the very front page of the basic statements in the CAFR. So it's right at the front.
Thank you very much.
Sure.
I was interested in the fact that you're engaged right now in starting the long-range financial plan revision. So most citizens are also aware of the fact that the Civic Center project is being discussed. So I was curious about the interdependence, perhaps, when you're engaging in consideration of such a major project. Is it a detriment not to have that long-range financial plan update before decisions are made that involve projects which will extend over a long period of time of major expenditures?
Yeah, it's a great question. I will say that since we first did the long-range plan in 2004 and the methodology associated with that, it's held pretty true. So it's land use based. So while we do make certain assumptions about how the land will be used, how much will be residential, how much will be commercial, how much will be local retail, how much will be commercial non-retail, those assumptions were built in based on the comprehensive plan at that time. Every time we've done an update, we take a look at the most recent comprehensive plan and say, did it change significantly or did it not as it relates to land use? And it's held pretty true. So I feel like even though it's been 5 years since we did the update, we will refresh it, but the changes that it's going to have on that long-range build-out ratio are not going to be impacted by that. And because the city center property was already built into the long-range land use plan for development as a mixed use, or what purpose they're going to put to that. It'll have some retail, it'll have those purposes. There's already the bones for that there. We know it was going to be that. We just didn't know the specific form it was going to take. So we will refresh that, we'll tweak it, make sure that it does reflect what the current plans are, but I don't see that as being a detriment to moving forward with any kind of a development project. What we do every time, if you've attended council meetings or study sessions where they have concept reviews, you'll note that it's a requirement for anybody who brings a concept review to include as part of that presentation how it impacts the long-range plan. It's either consistent with the plan or they're changing a land use that could have an impact on that build-out ratio. If they have an impact on the build-out ratio because they're converting a land use to a different purpose, then they have to report how that will or is projected to impact that long-range ratio at build-out by the transfer of a property from one category to another. So we do, even though it's been 5 years, it's current in the sense that as changes have occurred, we're trying to stay on top of that. Mm-hmm.
Could you just give me a quick brief on how the RFP process works? Just out of curiosity, is there like a standardized process? Is it case by case?
It is standardized. We have, as I said, the purchasing department is there to provide guidance for that. But basically, it's laid out, and we do have in our purchasing desk manuals and our user manuals on our internal site for employees. This is what an RFP is. This is what it needs to look like. Here's the components that you need to have in there. You need to be sure that the scope is clear and complete, and you need to be sure and ask these things of the respondents, up to and including how they're going to ensure, what insurance they're going to provide to support our choosing them as a selected vendor. Once those proposals come in, because with an RFP, it's not necessarily low bid, it's best value. So when the proposals come in, there's an internal committee, and it changes depending on who's doing the RFP and what type of service or materials that we're buying. The people who know most about that serve on the evaluation committee, and then each person independently evaluates the proposals. They meet as a work group and go over the evaluations and choose, again, what is the best value respondent, who's most responsible and responsive vendor, and then they would propose the awarding of that to that vendor. I will say that under municipal code, anything under $75,000, staff can purchase without council's specific authorization. But if it's $75,000 or above, then it comes before council, and those are some of the things you might see on council agendas, and sometimes they're on consent or whatever. But basically it says, we've done the process, we've selected this vendor, and it gives council the opportunity to review who was selected and ask questions if they have it, and then it's not actually awarded to the vendor until council passes the resolution.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Well, thank you very much. Have a great afternoon, and I'll just pass these out as I walk through. I know. Well, I just never know what I'm going to need.
I know.
Good afternoon. My name is Sandy Herbis, and I'm the assessor. The assessor division is a county function. So the city council acts as the county commissioners in this setting, right? We don't have county commissioners. We only have a city council, so they act on like the county commissioners would in a county setting. Our budget, as you can see, whoops, no you can't. is just a little under $1 million. Most of it is personnel, as you've seen before with the other departments. Drivers are dues and subscriptions, and travel and training, those tend to be our highest ones. Training, because we are, all but one of us in the department are appraisers. And we have continuing ed requirements to keep our licensing. So that's the training part. Dues and subscriptions, that's like trade periodicals to look at income and expense for various uses like industrial and office and that kind of thing when we're appraising commercial. Those kind of things. So those are kind of the subscriptions that we apply for. Dues are for trade organizations that we belong to. These are just for 2019. These happen to be ones that I highlighted for council as kind of special things that impacted our budget for 2019. So you can see software on the top. We have a reappraisal year. Any of you who own property in the county got a letter from me stating what your new value is for tax year 2019 and 2020, and that would have come out in May. You had till the end of June, till June 3rd, till the end of May, June 3rd, which was the business day that we're required to use by law. You could appeal it at that time, and I'll go through the appeal process in a minute. And then the third thing is an oil and gas property value impact study that might be occurring in 2019 or 2020, or we're not sure when. But those were. That was contemplated in the oil and gas regulation, or the new group that put together some, a comprehensive plan for the oil and gas. And so that was contemplated in there, so we budgeted for it in case council decides to go forward with that study. So we list, classify, and value all the property in the county. We have 24,000 parcels, about 27,000 accounts. We maintain the public records and all the inventory, how many bedrooms, how many bathrooms, what's the square footage, how much is above grade, how much is below grade, that kind of thing. We're responsible for keeping that as accurate as possible for the public to use. The total actual value of the property in the county is now, it was 13.1 in the fall. Now it's more like 14.5 billion, and that is an assessed value of 1.68 billion now. Most of the properties are valued every other year. Some properties are valued every year, like business personal property. Think tables, chairs, computers, that kind of thing. That's business personal property, that's every year. Oil and gas is every year, the production on that, and the equipment that they use. So some things every year. Most things like bricks and sticks, so homes and commercial properties, every other year on the odd year. New construction is reviewed every year. And the way that we do that is we look at what the percent complete is as of January 1st of the tax year. So if you have a single family home that's a foundation only on January 1st, we figure out what the total value of that home will be once it's completed, and then we put 10% of that value on the roll for the year. Those percentages that we apply are given to us by the state to use. So we have different levels that we can use, and I have a handout for that if you want to look at it later. So there's two processes for appeal. We just wound up for real property. June 3rd was the deadline for real property to come in. We got about just over 1,200 appeals. That's less than 5% of our 27,000 total properties in the county. So we have till the end of June to process those. And then we send out a letter to the people who appealed and let them know that what our decision is. If they don't like our decision, then they can go forward. There's 2 additional levels of appeal after that. If you forget, or hey, you were in France for May, you can file an abatement after January 1st of 2020. Abatement, think of abatement as a late appeal. So you can file an abatement and then go through the process in that manner. I'm not going to go through a lot of these accomplishments, goals, and challenges. You can read that yourself. Please feel free to contact me directly, and I can explain any of these. I think what you'll see as general sort of themes here are that software is big, and we're an early adopter always. And by adopting the software early, we get in on the ground and we get to get our processes actually using the new software and get more efficient quicker. So it's a little bit difficult sometimes to be an early adopter because we're still maybe working out stuff with the software. But we've decided that that's the way we prefer to be. And we've actually had some really good process improvement with it using the software workflows that we have now. The other thing that we have to think about is, hey, what does it look like when we build out? We'll have how many properties? And how are we going to get everything appraised? And when do we add staff? And those are the kind of things that we have to think about. And think about how we can use technology to our advantage. Understanding that because the software is developed doesn't mean it's going to be the best for us. We've actually not used some of the software that's available now because we didn't feel like it was cost effective for us to use. Bigger county, maybe. Our size county, no, right? So just because it's there doesn't mean it's great. So we have to think about that very hard, to think about how it's going to integrate into our workflow and how we work on a day-to-day basis and that sort of thing. And I have, Kyla, I have some handouts that I want to go through. Can we do the thing? This kind of shows you how property taxes are calculated, and I'll walk through it. She's going to zoom in. Oh. Yeah, so you can see here that the first line above, you'll see the actual value times the assessment rate is the assessed value, right? We have several assessment rates in the state of Colorado, and the major ones are residential at 7.15 and non-residential, which is basically commercial property, at 29%. So you take the actual value, and that's the value that the assessor places on your property. You multiply it by the assessment rate, and then you get the assessed value. You then multiply that by the mill levy, and you get your property tax. So it's that simple. I'm going to go ahead and post this on the site so that you guys can look at it. So, but as you can see here, what you'll notice is I'm illustrating. This is a tax area in Spruce Meadows. Their mill levy is 153.8872. Remember that that's in mills, right? So when you're doing the math, if you have a $500,000 house times 7.15%, you get your assessed value. You multiply that by your mill levy, and you remember you have to move your decimal points over three places to get your property tax. So in this illustration, you can see, that you have a property tax of about $5,500. If you were a commercial property owner and you had $500,000 commercial property, your property tax, because your assessment rate is 29%, is $22,300, not $5,500. The third example is if your mill levy is 100, right? Then your property tax would be $3,575, about $3,600. So it matters where you live as to what you're going to pay in property tax and what your mill levy is. Your assessment rate's going to be the same. It's the same statewide. It's set by the legislature, by the laws of the state of Colorado. So that is how property tax is calculated. So the second handout that I have, this is how new construction is determined. So 10% is like just a foundation. Then 25% you're basically dried in, right? You've got kind of the framing of the exterior of the structure. You've got the roof on. You've got the exterior sheathing, right? So you might have windows in. You might not. 50% is you've got the rough-ins done, right? That's the rough-in. Now you've got everything on the exterior done, all the windows and doors, plus you've got, the electrical, and then the plumbing and all of that is in a rough state. Then 75%, you get into the finishes, and then 100% you can occupy. We don't wait for the CO to put you at 100%. If you can walk in the door and live there, it's going to go on the roll at 100% for that tax year. So that's it for me, unless you have questions.
Thank you. You said there was a possible impact study that was budgeted in as far as gas and oil value impact.
Yeah, it's the impact to see whether or not.
No, I understand the concept.
Okay.
It's a matter of you're waiting for the council to approve of the study. So
we're going to go to a study session in July, give them an update on what we're seeing with the data currently at the 30,000 foot level, and then they have to start having the conversation themselves as to whether or not they want to go ahead with the study. Meaning the study, I'm looking at values at the 30,000 foot level anyway, right? Mm-hmm. The study would include getting a consultant, doing regression analysis, a more robust statistical analysis to try to isolate whether or not the values of properties are being impacted by the development going on around the houses.
Excellent, thank you. And is there any comprehensive build-out projection?
Yeah, so community development does have a document, and I can actually get to you where that's located. I know that we have it on the website that kind of talks about where build-out is. But I don't know exactly where it is. So I'll make sure that I get to you where that is. But they do kind of anticipate what will be built and what units, what entitlements are already out there, and what they anticipate being built out in various parts of the city, yes.
So do they have a comprehensive document that would also deal with water needs, power needs, population? Or you're just talking about physical structures?
That actually gets all rolled into, I think, the long-term financial plan that finance does. I don't know if there's a place on the website that has that information from the last time we did it, so I will... Oh, it is in the comprehensive. Okay.
And then third, there was, is there some sort of senior benefit, like elders who want to age in place? Is there some kind of program that they could take part in regarding the assessment?
The most popular program that we have is the senior homestead exemption is usually what it's called in almost every state. And that is something that is administered by my department, and then we put it on the property, and then that is taken into consideration when your tax bills are generated by the treasurer or the revenue manager in this case. So there is that, you need to live in the house for 10 years. It needs to be your primary resident, and you need to be at least 65 years of age on January 1st of the year. And all of those things need to be met before you apply. So we don't take applications until after January 1st for any tax year. And you have till there's a deadline. I think I might have it in there. No, it's in July is the deadline for applications to come in. So yes, and that's statewide. Yes.
Thank you.
Sure.
You know, I mean, since you're here, I guess I wanted to ask you a question about Gallagher, you know, which my brief understanding is this basically commercials taxed at 4 times the rate of as residential.
So 45% of the revenue coming into coming in needs to be, you know, it needs to be for residential and 55 for commercial.
And that kind of results in a 4-to-1. You were using the numbers like 28% compared to 7.2%.
Right.
And so my question came down to that my understanding was always that Adams 12 mill levy was higher because it had less commercial than Boulder Valley, and I'm in the Boulder Valley School District. Do you know what our commercial valuation is compared to residential, and how does that compare to, say, Boulder County? Have you ever looked at the numbers that way?
I haven't looked at the numbers as how we compare to the other counties, so I can't answer that question. And so what's the other part of the question?
I mean, it just has such a huge impact on your mill. I mean, you know, what you get out of your, you know, your property taxes. And I always understood Boulder Valley School District is better than Adams 12. And I was just curious whether our 28 mills are, you know, or do we have a high ratio of commercial compared to residential? Probably, I mean, compared to, say, Adams County or Boulder County.
I really don't know the answer to that question.
I mean, that's always an issue on the long-range financial plan, is to make sure we have that right ratio.
Yeah. So the thing is that we have about 55% of our value comes in, and that's residential. Okay. And then the rest is commercial. Non-residential. So it's commercial, it's oil and gas, it's business, personal property, it's other things. So and so that you'll see that. Reflected in the blended assessment rate. And so what I usually calculate every year at the end of the reappraisal, or every other year at the end of the reappraisal, is what's the actual blended assessment rate, and it's been around 11.4% to 11, and then. Right now is where it is. When I first started, it was more like 11.7%. So what that says is more and more development in residential, as compared to commercial, and so that, that's what
Which is not necessarily a good thing, but might be. So.
Yes, everybody can decide for themselves what is good for the city and county, but certainly we're seeing a little bit more swaying towards the residential side when the blended rate comes in. Thank you. Oh, clerk.
Good afternoon. My name is Jennifer Robinson. I'm the city and county clerk, and I've got my division heads with me. I've got Jeannie, who is our recording administrator. Todd is our elections manager. Brian is our motor vehicle administrator, and my deputy city and county clerk, Danae. So we brought everybody just in case there's lots of questions here. So clerk and recorder department. It is the mission of the city and county clerk's department to advocate for the residents of Broomfield in a deliverance of a wide range of services in a prompt, professional, and courteous manner. The clerk and recorder department consists of 5 divisions. We've got city clerk, elections, recording, board of equalization, motor vehicle. As Charles mentioned before, we are a city and a county, which makes us a little bit unique. There are 64 counties in the state of Colorado. All of the other clerk and recorder positions in the state are elected, but this position that I hold is appointed by the city manager with approval from council. So we're a little bit unique in that area. As far as the budget review, we have 17.6 full-time equivalents, and that equals to 16 full-time positions and 2 part-time positions. And then we do have roughly around 50 seasonal positions, which are the election judges. You can see the expenditures right here by division. Motor vehicle is a big expense for us, but they're also one of our biggest revenues. City clerk and recorder, then the clerk and recorder county, and elections. Board of Equalizations is just really a sliver of what we do. But Board of Equalization, we work very closely with the assessors department. You just heard from Sandy. We provide administrative assistance to include assembly of documentation to be considered at the BOE meeting, taking minutes and scheduling for the real and personal property, appeal and abatement process for petitions submitted by taxpayers. Fun fact here, the county's reevaluation process happens on the odd years, but applicants can petition up to 18 months, and you did just hear that from Sandy. So yeah, we basically administer the monthly abatement hearings, and we hire the hearing officers for the appeals process. City clerk. So we are the clerk to the council, which means that we create and send out the council agendas. We take minutes for the meetings. We also recruit for boards and commissions. We are the custodian of all city and county records. We respond to Colorado Open Records Act, the CORA requests. We administer liquor, trash, solicitor, and do all of our licensing as well. Local licensing authority. Fun fact, Broomfield has approximately 150 liquor licenses, and this does keep growing, and around 50 solicitor licenses. Additionally, in 2018, council passed an ordinance requiring short-term rental licenses for Broomfield. Our office administers those as well. Right now, we only have 10 short-term rentals out there, but we know that there are about 100 properties that are advertising short-term rentals, so we are in the process of encouraging them to come in and get their license. So city clerk, you can see that the main expenditure here is personnel. We also do have in our budget for the advertising, so any of the public notices, the ordinances and public hearing, or public notices for the local licensing authority, we pay for that out of our budget. And then the municipal code supplement. So anytime that there is a code change, that comes out of our budget. Elections. We are the 7th highest voter turnout in the nation. We are the chief election official for the city and county. We have around 47,000 active voters and growing. And in 2019, we are going to have 4 elections in 13 months. We will have the coordinated municipal election, which some of you are very interested in, for council members and the mayor on November 5th. And then looking into 2020, we will have the presidential primary, which is the first time that Colorado has done this in 20 years. So it is new for all of us. We will be coordinating that presidential primary on March 3rd. Then we will have the state primary June 30th, and the presidential general is November 3rd. And also, as you can see from the graph, Broomfield voters are primarily unaffiliated, and then Democrats and Republicans are kind of right head and head there. Full-time staff of 3 in the elections division. We've got the elections manager, elections operations coordinator, and an elections technician, and then, as I mentioned before, approximately 55 election judges. This is kind of the layout of Broomfield. Right now, we consist of 5 wards and 37 precincts. And Sean Sullivan brought to council last night, we are talking about redistributing those ward boundaries, and then the precincts we will do after the census in 2020. Elections, you can see our expenditures is primarily personnel, and the factors that drive the cost of a particular election are number of elections held, voter turnout, and number of entities participating. Broomfield has 5 24-hour ballot boxes, which is one more actually than the state requires. The majority of Broomfield citizens are within a 2-mile radius of a drop box. Broomfield motor vehicle, we do title and registration, handicap placards, and out-of-state transfers. This is our budget again. Primarily, you can see that our budget is for personnel in motor vehicle. But here's the motor vehicle by the numbers. 66,366 vehicles are registered in Broomfield. In office transaction, we average about 4,700 customers per month and about 240 customers per day. The average wait time, which we are very, very proud of, is 3 minutes and 23 seconds, and the average transaction time is right around 8 minutes. Now, the state has launched several online services. So there are 17 particular motor vehicle or driver's licenses services that you can now do online, and there are brochures in the back there if you would like to grab that. You can visit the mydmv.colorado.gov and skip the trip. And then also in 2019, 2020, there is going to be a new Colorado motor vehicle app, which will allow citizens to renew their driver's license as well as their motor vehicle plates online. It's the My Colorado app, and it is available now in the App Store. We are actually piloting the app with the Department of Revenue over the summer, and we are hoping to launch it in September. Recording. So we record all of your public documents, real estate recordings, plats and maps, planned unit developments, or real estate history. The recording division records any documents where there is a need for a public record, and we record about 16,000 documents a year. We also, why am I having such a hard time with this word? You can obtain your birth certificate. That was hard. Here with us, and we issue about 1,770 birth certificates per year. And I love that we got this little fun fact that this service saved Broomfield residents about 77,000 miles last year by not having to travel to the Colorado Department of Public Health and Environment headquarters in Cherry Creek. You can come right here to our office, or you can go down to Health and Human Services as well and get your birth certificate there. That's what I've got. Sorry, I thought I had one more slide on my paper, but that's all I have. So if you guys have questions, again, I've got all of my division heads here, so we can answer any of your questions. Yes?
Thank you. In Boulder, you can buy a license to be liquor license. So in Boulder, you can apply for a liquor license where you can serve liquor, but not necessarily sell it. For example, like in a salon.
Correct. Yes.
Is that offered in Broomfield?
It is. Yeah, there are several different types of liquor licenses, and they are all listed out on our website. But I think that one would fall under lodging and entertainment if they wanted to do that. But yes, there's a Saloon Cuts that I think is down on Midway, and Zunai right in there, and it's a hair salon that sells beer and wine while they are giving haircuts, and they obtain their liquor license through us.
So they sell it instead of just offer it to the clientele?
Correct, yes.
And secondly, what's the length of time that somebody can live in Broomfield before they need to change their plates on their vehicles?
I think the technical answer, Brian, can you help me out? Is it 90 days?
It's 60 days.
60 days.
Yeah, it's going to be 60 for out-of-state residents moving into the state, 60 days for a motor vehicle license plate, and it's going to be 90 days for a driver's license, of which we don't offer within this county driver's license.
Right, I think the nearest driver's license office is on 104th and, yeah, I-25.
Is there any study about possible lost revenue for people who just stay and never convert their plates?
Boy, so Brian, do you want to answer that? I don't know of any. I know that code compliance does go out and check that, but.
Yeah, I'm not sure there's anything specific by statute. You are required to fill out documentation that states when you brought the vehicle in and when you officially establish your residency. So we go off that document more than anything else. Now we can't really enforce it to an extent. You know, if you're honest, then we enforce it. But there are substantial, if you haven't been doing it for a long period of time, then there will be late fees as well as back ownership tax that would be subject for collection. But an actual number, I don't know if you'd ever be able to determine what that actual number would be.
And I think the hard thing is when they come to the motor vehicle clerks and they'll ask them, when did you move to Colorado? If the customer says, oh, just 2 weeks ago, and they've been here for 5 years, there's really nothing we can do about it. But code compliance, I know that they do go and check, and if they consistently see out-of-plate vehicles that are licensed out of plate, they can give them a what's the word? Ticket? Sorry. Anything else? Okay. Anybody else? We've got elections here and everything, you guys. Like, we're loaded. If you guys have questions, now's your time. All right, then I'm going to hand it over to David Allen.
Well, good afternoon, everybody. I'm David Allen. I'm the Director of Public Works here at the City and County of Broomfield. I'm looking at the clock, and we're about 7 minutes over our time slot. So I want to ask the candidates, do you guys have time restrictions? I could be flexible with my presentation if necessary. Or if you really want to know a lot about Public Works, I could probably speak for 45 minutes to an hour, just given kind of the past experience that I've had in similar presentations that I've given to City Council. So I don't know if you guys have kind of a rough time frame that you'd be looking at for this portion of the presentation. You guys open? I tell you what, I will shoot for, say, 20 minutes tops. So that should get us out of here by 3:30. And then after that, we'll get everybody on their way. So again, I'm David Allen. I'm the Director of Public Works. We have a very large department, and what I'm going to do is I have a shortened presentation of our budget presentation that I typically give to our City Council, and so I'm going to kind of focus more on the financial aspects, and as I go through, I'll be highlighting the different services and programs that we support and provide to the community. In short and in general, we're responsible for operating and maintaining the city's infrastructure and facilities. Short and to the point. We have an operating budget of about $41 million per year, and this would be the 2019 budget. We have just over 181 full-time employees in Public Works. The bulk of those are full-time positions, as you can see the breakdown there. We also have several part-time positions. Most of those are in the custodial areas, and as I get into our facility maintenance, I'll be highlighting those a little bit more. One thing I do want to point out is that we do have quite a few seasonal and temporary positions. We have almost 100 seasonal staff that we ramp up on every year, and the bulk of those are in our parks maintenance division. And so we have a lot of extra work, obviously, with the lawn mowing and maintaining the grounds. And so that's where the majority of those seasonal positions come into play, as they come in to supplement and assist us in the summer months. We have 9 different management divisions. Those are kind of our functional areas within Public Works. And we are funded through 7 different financing funds. These are the different buckets where we get money from. Some of the most obvious ones, and Pat Soderberg had touched on some of the key ones, are the water and the sewer fund. We also have a water reclamation fund, which is another term for our non-potable reuse system that we have. We also have a streets fund, cemetery fund, a facilities fund, and the general fund. And so those are kind of our different sources of revenue that cover our operating expenses. This graph here shows generally how our functions are broken out. So we kind of look at it internally as 3 different main areas. Our first, I'm going to start on the right-hand side there, are what we call our enterprise funds. Those funds consist of our water, sewer, and water reclamation operations. These operations are distinctly different from the other operations in the respect that they're primarily funded through what we call charges for service. And as you look at the budgets, there's a revenue line item that says charges for service. That's basically your monthly water bill and sewer bill. We do have several reuse customers that fund our water reclamation system, but all of our operations and maintenance activities as they pertain to those functions are funded by basically the ratepayers that pay those bills. So there's no additional funding sources that come into those areas. and they're not subsidized by the general fund. On the left-hand side is what we're calling our community services. These are the things that the public is the most public-facing operations that we have. So that includes our streets maintenance, our park maintenance, and then to a lesser degree, our solid waste and recycling operations. Broomfield has one centralized recycling center. It's located off of Commerce Street and Nickel Street, and so that falls under that. In addition to that, we run several different community programs under our solid waste and recycling program. One of our biggest ones we just wrapped up a few weeks ago is our spring cleanup program, where we go around and collect large items throughout the residential areas in the community on an annual basis. And that program has grown considerably over the years. 2 years ago, I think it was 3 years ago, we had 3 different Saturdays designated for this program. And last year, not this year that we just completed, but in 2018, we had to expand it to 4 Saturdays just because we weren't able to get to all the communities or all the residents and pick up all of the items that were left out. So we've expanded that to 4 days just last year in 2018. And then the last group that we have is what we call our internal services. These are the divisions that support the other operations here within the city and county of Broomfield. One of the biggest ones, obviously, is the facilities. So we maintain all the buildings for the different occupants, and then we also maintain our fleet. The biggest user of the fleet is Public Works, but there are other groups within the community or within the organization that also have vehicles and equipment that are supported. But the bulk of those, probably 80 to 90% of those, are within Public Works. And then with that, I'd like to go into some of the individual, well, before I do that, here's kind of a pie chart that provides a high-level overview of that $41 million. And the one on the right-hand side that says by account type, what I do want to point out there is that the area in green is what represents our contract services. And so as you can see, almost half of our budget is related to what we call contract services. So those are not only contract services, but also agreements that we have to purchase, say for water. Those are the fees that we pay for our water system. And in addition to that, all of our utility payments and things like that fall within that contract services component. The blue is the personnel, which is the next largest piece because we have almost 200 full-time employees. And then lastly, the supplies and materials. Those are as it indicates, those are the supplies and materials that we use and need to purchase to support our operations. The chart on the left-hand side essentially shows how the allocation of those funds or the entire budget is allocated within the different 9 divisions within Public Works. And the 2 I just want to point out are parks is certainly our largest or close to our largest, and our second largest one is our water treatment budget. Our water treatment operations is relatively small, but we do have a Denver water contract. And under that contract, we purchase treated water from Denver on an annual basis. Our contract has a minimum take-or-pay limit or minimum take-or-pay amount. And so we're obligated to take a certain volume of water each and every year. And so the largest portion of that water treatment budget is that Denver water contract. And I'll touch upon that just a little bit more as we get to the water treatment component. So to walk through all the different divisions, first is the Public Works Administration. It's the office that oversees all the other functions within Public Works. It includes myself as a director. I have a deputy director and then also an admin person who helps support our operations. Our annual budget's about $430,000, and it's primarily just staff. Secondly, we have fleet maintenance. We maintain close to 500 pieces of equipment and vehicles within the city, county, Broomfield, and that range of equipment includes everything from the small string trimmers that our parks folks uses for trimming the parks, all the way up to the large snow plows and heavy equipment like front end loaders and backhoes. that are used in our streets and our utility operations. The main cost drivers for that fleet maintenance budget are outlined there. Personnel is certainly the biggest component there at $800,000 of the $1.8 million. The next component is our fuel expenses. We have about $560,000 worth of fuel expenditures that we have each year, and that fuel expenditure split between diesel and unleaded. One of the things that I do want to point out is that when we purchase fuel, we don't have to pay state or federal tax on that fuel. And so the prices that you see at the pump are generally anywhere from 40 to 45 cents higher than what we purchase fuel at. And that's reflected there. And the last piece is our parts and supplies. Those are essentially the oil filters and the shock absorbers and the tires and everything else that we use to maintain the different vehicles that we have and equipment within the city and county of Broomfield. Parks is our next group. Park maintenance has about 40 full-time people. It's one of the larger divisions within Public Works. We manage everything from, we've divided the park operations up into smaller groups that specialize in within different areas, just because we're so large now. When we were a smaller community and we had 10 or 15 people in parks, all 10 or 15 people knew how to do everything. But we've gotten to a point where we're large enough now that we have very specialized and individual maintenance groups within parks. And so we have a group that is specifically dedicated to mowing, and that's their primary job. We have another group that's dedicated to maintaining the irrigation and sprinkler systems. We have another group that maintains all the horticulture. So those are the flower beds that you see on the street corners and in front of the buildings of all the facilities. We also have a structures and athletics fields group. So they're the ones that maintain the concession stands, the restrooms, and also the athletic fields that support the local youth programs. Those folks are generally programmed and their schedules are staggered to support those programs so that we have staffing available essentially 7 days a week during the peak summer season, because those youth programs use our facilities on Saturdays and Sundays as well as during the weekend at night. We also have a forestry group and a group that's dedicated to maintaining our open space areas. So we have an open space department that is more on the policy side of implementing programs and things, but in Public Works, we're the ones that do the maintenance pieces of the open space piece. So if there's a trail that washes out, our staff are the ones that go out and repair those and take care of those. As I said earlier, facility maintenance is responsible for maintaining all of our buildings. That includes all of the HVAC systems, fire suppression systems, all the electrical systems, as well as providing for all of the utility charges within the buildings. And then lastly, and this is where most of our staff comes from, is providing custodial services. So we have 32 full-time staff in facility maintenance and 12 part-time. And you can see with that next bullet point kind of the breakdown between what we call the custodial staff and the maintenance staff. And so we have 31 custodians and 10 maintenance staff. So the bulk or 2/3 of our staff in facility maintenance is for custodial services. In terms of our cost drivers, personnel is the largest piece there, and then the second largest piece is the utilities. And so that's our electricity, natural gas, and water payments for all the facilities that we have. Certainly, as you look at the building sizes, those that are the largest generally have the largest bills. So this facility, police, the detention center, Paul Durda Rec Center, and formerly the Broomfield Community Center, those are the buildings that have the largest utility bills. And so we're always looking at opportunities and different programs to be as cost efficient as we can on those areas. And so when there's a need to replace, say, pumps or motors or things like that, we're always looking for options and opportunities to purchase high efficiency type motors, which will then eventually lead to cost savings for us on the utility side. One of the newer things that we're looking at as we're starting to progress and the technology is progressing, we're starting to convert to more instant hot water type systems instead of having not only just hot water heaters, but also for our larger systems, we have boilers. And those boilers are used as part of our overall heating and ventilation system. And we're starting to convert to that because we're finding that they're much more energy efficient. And then lastly, we've invested a lot of time and money on replacing lights within the facilities. And so each year we're kind of systematically going through and replacing the old incandescent lights with lower energy use LED lights. And then as part of that program or process, we're also getting rebates from Xcel for making those conversions. So we're kind of getting the advantage both on the installation side as well as seeing reduced costs as well. Street maintenance includes our pavement preservation system, traffic signal maintenance, street lighting, street sweeping, and then most importantly in the wintertime, snow and ice control in our plowing operations. Our primary cost drivers for streets is with personnel. We have 23 full-time employees in our personnel budget is just over $2 million. The next biggest expense that we have are our street lights. We pay $1.3 million a year on our street lights. And the thing that's challenging about the street light program is that we pay for the lights, but we don't own the lights. Xcel and or United Power owns those lights. And so we're essentially just paying the electric bill for the usage of those. When it comes to replacements, for example, if a pole gets knocked down or is rusting out, we pay for those as well. So it's kind of an interesting, kind of a challenging thing. And I know that there have been some other local communities that have been looking at purchasing the streetlight systems from Xcel, and one of the challenges that those folks have been finding is that Xcel has been overvaluing the value of the asset, and so it's been challenging for those folks to go ahead and move forward with purchasing the streetlights because they're very close to the actual cost of what the asset is, as opposed to looking at it more from a depreciated value. And so that's one of the challenges we have in terms of this operation, because it's essentially a cost or an expense that we don't have much control over. It would be kind of a different situation if we needed to save money in this area, that we could maybe cycle the timing of the lights and maybe have every other light in the street come on and off for a little bit of time or things like that. But this is one area that is strictly just kind of a pass-through, if you will, in terms of our operating expenses. The other cost drivers that we have are for our snow and ice supplies. Those are the de-icing materials that we apply in the wintertime. We also have a large contract to support our snow and ice operations for our residential plowing program. Broomfield is unique in the respect that we plow all the residential streets whenever we get 4 or more inches of accumulation on the residential streets. Our plan, the way it's structured right now, is to provide a single pass down those streets. Most other communities have 8 or 12-inch thresholds before they go into residential streets, and so that's where the contractor expenses come from in our snow and ice program. And then we also have just under about $400,000 of contractual patching that we do. We don't have our own street maintenance or street reconstruction crews. What we do is contract most of that out. We have a small ProPatch truck that we go around and use that for patching potholes. But when it comes to larger repairs, we have that as contract service, just primarily because then we don't have to maintain the equipment that goes along with those type of operations. And one piece that's not highlighted here but is managed and administered by our streets staff is our annual pavement preservation program. That is a capital improvement program where we have, I believe it's about $4 million budgeted a year, to $4.5 million budgeted each year, and we provide seal coats and overlays and chip seals to designated areas within the city. And as part of that program, our staff annually conducts annual inspections of every street in Broomfield and rates the streets and assigns a condition rating on that, and then that information is what is used to kind of determine which areas get the treatment. Water supply and resources. I'm going to talk real briefly about this. In fact, I could probably talk for an hour alone just on this one topic alone. But Broomfield has a very robust water supply system. We have, as I mentioned earlier, a contract with Denver Water to purchase a minimum amount of water. That contract limitation is the minimum purchase amount on that contract is 4,700 acre feet per year. We have the ability to go up to 6,500 acre feet per year under that contract. So
Denver purchases it from us?
No, we purchase it from them. And it's a treated water contract where they provide that water treated to our system. The connection is right near Zuni and Midway. We have a rechlorination station that's located just west of the self-storage facility on Midway, and that's what that large building, it's like almost like a 2-story building that has 2 garage doors on it. Very compact but tall building. But we have, as I mentioned, we have the ability to go up to 6,500 acre feet per year on that particular contract. To kind of put things in perspective, Broomfield's current annual water demand on the potable water side is about 13,000 acre feet per year. And so we have a minimum take or pay amount of 4,700 acre feet. And that's what our general target is because that source of supply for us is our most expensive source of supply. So then once we meet that contractual obligation, then we rely on our other water supplies, which are a combination of Colorado Big Thompson units and our ownership shares in the Windy Gap project. Those are 2 projects that deliver mountain from the West Slope to Broomfield through Carter Lake and then down a pipeline, 38-mile pipeline that terminates at Broomfield's water treatment plant on 144th, just next to Holy Family High School. And the interesting thing about the water supply, like I said, we currently have a very robust system. We do have a small gap, and that gap is related to our future build-out. And once that gap has been shored up, Broomfield will be set to be able to serve the entire community with water all the way through build-out. That one missing piece is what we call the Windy Gap Fermi project. The partners that are part of the Windy Gap project, Broomfield is one of 13 different partners in that project, have joined together to build a new reservoir called the Chimney Hollow Reservoir. This reservoir is planned for 90,000 acre feet of storage, and it's planned to be located directly west of Carter Lake. The construction of that reservoir, once that reservoir is built, that will firm up all of Broomfield's water supplies and we'll be able to meet our water needs all the way through build-out. So again, it's a very critical project. It's a project that's been under planning probably close to 18 years. I think the initial studies for the project started back in 2001. And we have gotten to a point with this project where we have gotten all the federal permits, we've gotten all the state permits. We have completed the engineering design for the project. We're almost ready to go out to bid. And the only outstanding hurdle or obstacle that we have right now is a lawsuit that was filed by Wild Earth Guardians and other environmental groups. I think Save the Colorado, Save the Poudre were also part of that lawsuit. And so we're waiting to hear the court's decision on that lawsuit before we go out and actually formally bid the project and then start construction. But we're hopeful that we'll hear something soon on that. As it pertains to our budget here, on the water supply side, we have about a $2.2 million budget. We only have 4 full-time employees within this group. As you can see under the cost drivers, our main cost drivers are charges and assessments. So we have about 2.1 of the 2.2 million of that entire budget is related to charges and assessments. And those are the operating costs that we get charged to deliver both the Colorado Big Thompson water and the Windy Gap water to Broomfield. The Denver water piece is actually under the water treatment side, but those water assessments are associated with those other two supplies. Underwater treatment, we have 10 full-time employees. 6 of those are operators. We have a couple of chief plant operators, a superintendent, and also an administrative person in that group. Our budget for 2019 was $8.8 million, and 6.6 of that is our Denver water contract. And we are currently paying at a rate of, I think it's $4.20 per 1,000 gallons. $4.20 per 1,000 gallons for the treated water delivery. That rate is higher than the Broomfield rate, which is $3.22. I'm looking at Pat, and she's nodding her head. So I think it's $3.22 per 1,000 gallons. And so we're able to sell the water to our customers at a lower rate than what we're buying the Denver water, because we get the water from CBT and Windy Gap, which is a lower cost supply for us. So as we continue to build out and grow, our long-term plan is to continue utilizing and relying on those other sources up until a point that we have exhausted all of that, and then we can start taking larger deliveries of Denver water. And so our entire build-out water demand is just over 20,000 acre feet. And as I indicated, we're currently at about 17,000 acre feet of water use per year. So that kind of gives you a perspective of where we're at. We're about 65% of build out when it comes to water usage. Wastewater treatment. We have 16 full-time employees in wastewater treatment. Our annual budget there is about $3.6 million. And our cost drivers are first and foremost personnel. That makes up almost half of that amount. The other piece is contractual services, and so that's made up of a combination of several different components. One of the largest ones being the electricity cost. We have almost $760,000 of electricity usage each year at the wastewater treatment plant. Wastewater treatment is kind of interesting in the respect that it is more of a biological process that requires essentially forced air to treat the water, and so that's where the bulk of the electricity cost is basically to blow air into the treatment process. Unlike our water treatment process, it's more of a chemical process, so we rely more heavily on the chemicals to help precipitate out any of the solids that are dissolved within the water. The wastewater treatment process is a biological process that relies heavily on energy. We also have some chemical costs associated with that. And then lastly, we have biosolids handling. So Broomfield owns a farm in Weld County near, it's southwest of Greeley. It's about a 1,000-acre farm. And what we do is when one of the byproducts of the wastewater treatment process is a solid that comes off of that process. We have that solid sent to A1 Organics for composting, and then that compost is then applied to the farm that Broomfield owns in Weld County. And we have a tenant farmer that operates that farm for us. And it's a really good way for us to be able to dispose of our waste from our wastewater plant in an environmental friendly manner. In the absence of having that type of an operation set up, all of that solid waste would normally get sent to a landfill. And then because of the volumes that we would have, it tends to fill up the landfills quicker. And so, again, it's a good environmentally sound way of disposing of our solid waste from our wastewater treatment process. Next, we have our environmental services group. This group is primarily our lab staff that supports our water treatment and wastewater treatment operations. So there's a lot of water quality sampling that goes on within this group. In addition to that, they provide support to some of our other educational programs that we have. And they also manage our community programs. So I had mentioned early on the onset our spring cleanup. We also have our household hazardous waste program and our water conservation program and e-waste programs. All those programs are managed from our environmental services group. And lastly, we have our utilities group. They're responsible for maintaining both the water and sewer systems as basically what I call the pipes in the ground. So they're responsible for managing all the water mains and all the sewer mains, as well as our pump stations and tanks that we have to distribute our treated water, as well as moving the wastewater to our wastewater treatment facility. We have 13 different lift stations in Broomfield just because of the topography. Generally speaking, wastewater treatment plants are situated at the lowest elevation within a community. And for us, that's at 124th at Lowell. So that's where our wastewater plant is located. But as many of you know, we have a very hilly topography here in Broomfield. And there's areas that can't necessarily flow by gravity all the way to that location. And so we have, as I'd mentioned, 13 lift stations that pump the wastewater up to a point where then it can flow by gravity to the wastewater plant. On the other side, on the water side, water distribution side, we also have the same challenge. So as I had mentioned, our treatment plant is located at 144th, just east of Sheridan. There are areas in Broomfield that are at a higher elevation than that. And ideally, you'd like to locate your water treatment plant at a place where you could just let the water flow downhill to serve the rest of the community, but we don't have that. In particular, we have several pump stations that move the water over to the west side of town to serve the Interlock and Flatirons area, and then also the detention area and Level 3 and Skystone. So we have 4 pump stations that are used to move water in that direction. So that concludes my presentation. This is about 7 minutes over, not quite at the 20-minute mark, but if you'd like more information on any specific topic, I'd be happy to provide that. As I had indicated, some of the other topics, for example, such as water, we could probably spend a good hour just talking about water supply and water treatment and our long-term plans for meeting those needs. I do have my contact information on our city's website, and there's a lot of information about all the different divisions that are also located on our city website. And with that, I'd like to open it up for any questions.
Thank you. Is there a pothole hotline?
Yes, there is.
Can
And
I
I
have
don't
it,
know what it
please?
is, but I will tell you, if you don't have it, I would call 6334. So that's 303-438.
Slow down, please. 303.
303-438-6334. That's our general administration number for Public Works. And if you call that number, they will make sure that the information on any potholes gets forwarded onto our streets group so they can take care of those.
Thank you. And for street sweepers, is there a schedule posted somewhere? I will always hear them in my neighborhood and then run to move the cars.
What we typically do is we will send out a be in the loop notice before we have the street sweepers go out. So if you would like, I would recommend that you go online and register for Be in the Loop and select the street sweeping checkbox, and then you'll get notifications whenever we have our street sweepers out.
Thank you. And in regards to Excel and United owns the lighting.
Yes.
They own the lights. We pay for it, but if anything happens to it, we pay for the electricity, we pay for the maintenance, we pay for the repair.
Yes.
But we don't own it.
Correct.
If we owned our own municipal power, how would that switch the dynamic?
I think that would give us a little bit more leverage to own the streetlights.
Thank you. And then for snow and ice, you said there's a 4-inch, that's the number before they come in and they at least plow through it once.
For the residential streets.
For
yes.
residential streets. That has not been the case where I live in Lackamora. It just hasn't. So is there a number that once it's, like say it's 5-6 inches, and if no plow has come, is there a number to call in to have at least some kind of notification?
Yes. So I would use the same number that I gave you for the potholes. So again, that number's, oh, you have a pothole. Pat has the pothole number.
Right here.
So the pothole number,
There's also a form they can fill out. If you go to the website, you can get a form, but there's a number there.
Well, I'd rather just leave the other one.
Oh, well,
Because
that's
that has
okay.
an extension. I didn't know we had those.
That's on the website.
So, yeah, the 6334 would be the number to call to with the snow plowing on the streets. And there are some residential areas, and I should point this out, is that there are certain areas within the community in the residential streets that we've designated as what we call collector streets that are part of our snowplow operations. And we have a map of all of our primary routes, secondary routes posted on our website under the streets group.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome. You guys are an easy crowd. Or it's getting late. Well, thank you very much. I really appreciate all you guys coming out. I hope it was helpful and informational. And certainly, if you have any follow-up questions, I would get in touch with either the departments that were here or with Jennifer Robinson in the clerk's office. And then what we'll do is we'll go ahead and provide you with comments and then also post any responses that we get to the council candidate portal so that then all the candidates have equal access to all the information. Okay? So thank you again for coming out.